her bright enthusiasm, her positive belief in that we can create this future that we all want has really inspired me on my own journey. So we're grateful that she's here with us today. Buckminster Fuller has called Barbara Marx Hubbard the best informed human now alive regarding futurisms and the foresights it has produced. Widely regarded as his philosophical heir, Barbara is a social innovator, speaker, author, educator, and leader in the new worldview of conscious evolution. So it's my pleasure to welcome Barbara Marx Hubbard.
I think it takes a long while to grow up. And having just turned 80, and feeling that for some deep reason I've been holding a memory of the future, almost since the beginning. And the great privilege for visionaries, and by the way, my advice to all visionaries is don't die. Because if you have a deep-held vision that almost feels to you like a memory of what you already know, and you stay with it, no matter how it might appear to others, if you stay with it long enough, you may be fortunate enough, like I am, to live through the actualization of that which you've been envisioning. And that your role as you get older,
Fix that.
you're going to fix it.
Yeah, I gotta fix that.
Hitting the necklace, let me take it off. Okay, don't die. The visitors don't. And there is also a very interesting experience of being an elder from the future, is one way I think of myself. Is as you've been carrying this, I'm sure is true of so many people here, there comes a shift point from being a visionary about it to actually living through it. And that shift point in our lives, how many of you here that feel that you might be going through what you've been envisioning? You see, that's very, very interesting. So I am going to lay this forward for you as what I'm calling the sacred way of conscious evolution. The sacred way of consciously evolving humanity. And I'd like to just give a brief background check-in here, because I realized in listening to John Kinney and others, I've known Jose Arguelles for many years, that we come from every different type of point of origin in order to get here. Some of us have not had any experience of indigenous people. We have not lived on the land. We lived in big cities. And I just want to hear, just for a moment, check in and see what's your point of origin in your ancestry, that you were born into. And let's see how many different points of ancestry are in this room. Just shout it out.
Potawatomi.
Italian, English, Hungarian, Celtic, Polish, Ukrainian, Indian, German. What was that one? Cherokee. Oh. Okay, see, we're all here. We're all here. And I just want to say to you that I came from, to bring in this part of the ancestry, probably one of the more difficult ancestries in the world would be German and Russian Jewish. Oh, boy, they. When you think of it, it's a heavy ancestry. A very, very heavy ancestry. And the way it started out was being born in New York City with a Jewish, agnostic, secular, materialistic, two-hearted, generous, Jewish toy maker. when I asked him what religion we were, he said, "You're an American, do your best." Absolutely no religion. It was during the Nazi period. He was agnostic anyway. I was born in New York, so I never heard about being Jewish. I never heard about race prejudice. I never heard about any of it. I went to Dalton School, and we were all different colors, and it didn't matter. And it was really a great beginning. And then I had a very extremely happy childhood until 1945, when the United States dropped the bombs on Japan. It's interesting how that was pivotal in what John Kenny was saying, what the Native peoples have been saying, what we've all been saying. And here's how it struck me and really started my life, which I think leads to 2012. Because I'd had a happy childhood, and because my father knew some of these generals of the Second World War, and I thought everything we did was good. It was just an innocence about America, about being a child of this generation and this culture. And what I realized was, when I saw those bombs drop, after the horror of it, a question arose. What is the meaning of all this new power that's good? Where is humanity going that we would choose to go that's commensurate with science, technology, and the very growing edge of power? Of course, atomic energy was only the beginning. You know, with nuclear, biotech, nanotech, space travel, huge new powers. And you could foresee, briefly, that self-conscious, self-centered humans with this degree of power could not survive. And I'm the daughter of the toy maker, and everything is just fine, and I wake up knowing we will not make it. So I asked the universe and everybody I could possibly find, do you know any positive images of the future equal to the new power? Not life after death, not life in a purely metaphysical form, but the evolving life. And I started to read through all of philosophy and religion to see if I could find an answer. And the closest I got to it at that time was the New Testament. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep. We shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. This corruptible will become incorruptible. Death shall have no dominion. And I thought, that must be it. I'll join the church. This is step one in the search. So, believe it or not, I joined the Episcopal Church in Scarsdale, New York. And I went to the minister to join. I'm 16 years old, and I said, is any of this true? You know, if it is, it's really good news. We shall all be changed. And I could tell instantly he didn't know. He had no idea. And when I was in the pews and he was telling the story of Genesis and the difficulty of Eve having caused this problem, I was so furious I fell off the pew. And I wanted to rise up and say, no, if there's any problem, it's the description of God. God the Father. That couldn't be. So that was, it's hard to fail at being an Episcopalian, but I did. So this is in the search for the meaning of our power that's good. Next step, Bryn Mawr College. Maybe they know at these universities. And you look at all these courses, and you want a course on the future of humanity, where are we going, and what should I do, and how can I be part of it? If I'm an American, I have to do my best. What would it be? Well, you couldn't possibly ask. There was no question, and still is no real question at universities, which are broken up into all these disciplines, as to the direction of human evolution and our deeper life purpose or vocation within it. And so I read in my room most of the time, And then my father knew President Eisenhower, and I was taken to the Oval Office in 1952. And I said, Mr. President, I have a question for you. Yes, young lady? The question is, Mr. President, what do you think is the meaning of all this new power that's good? And he shook his head and he said, I have no idea. So there it was. And it's a really good question just to contemplate for a moment, that the power is so new and it's so destructive if misused. And yet, if it's of an evolutionary order, what could it mean? This was the question. And I went to Paris and I met an artist. And I'd like to bring in, my life is a preparation for 2012. That's why I'm telling you this. So I met an artist on the left bank, had lunch alone. There he was, he came in. And I asked him my question, what do you think is the meaning of all this new power that's good? And what's your purpose? And he said, I'm an artist, and I'm seeking a new image of humans commensurate with our power to shape the future. And I thought, I'm going to marry you. And he said, we've lost our story in the Western culture. If you take it, and we've lost our picture, here's Michelangelo's David. Then Monet, Manet, Pissarro, Picasso, Jackson Pollock, white on white. This was 1948. And modern art showed us the disintegration of the image of humans. But he said, until the artists discover a new story and a new image that attracts us to become, we can't go any further. So he said that was his role as an artist. We got married. And I forgot the question because I had 5 children. I mean, that was... So I just want to go back for a moment to just see for a moment how many people in this room feel that you are artists who in some way or another can contribute to an image of what we're becoming. Wow. Now this is absolutely essential. Because it's one thing to give speeches and write books and do audio tapes. It's another thing to bring it alive. And I bet that's my cell phone. Could you turn that off? I'm so sorry. Just briefly, what happened in Western culture or human culture is after the first 2 world wars, the atomic nuclear holocaust possibility, then moving into environmental collapse. The entire story of the Western world, and to some extent the whole modernistic world, is that we make progress through more knowledge, and especially technological industrial knowledge, and that completely collapsed. And the new story that would take into account the proper use of all this new power is being born among us now. And I really believe that everyone who has any artistry at all to contribute as we move towards 2012, there should be a great collaboration of artists to help us experience, to see, to participate in what we are becoming. So I just want to tell you the people that I'd like to bring and offer into this great evolutionary pot here is just one thing on the marriage of the 5 children. That was in the 50s. And it is amazing the cultural imprint of the feminine, even if she was relatively well educated, because I wanted to go to Washington and get a job, but I got pregnant. So what happened was the imprint was you are a wife and mother, period. Now that's amazing when you think of how we've progressed since the 50s to 2010. Really, really strong. And what happened was the depression within me, with the children, with the husband, with everything that was basically good. And I think I'm the sort of the oldest of the emerging generation to remember what it was like not to know any of this. And how many women in the world really haven't had the opportunity to fully know this. But the depression was so deep, the Freudian analysis of the feminine depression was neurotic. Neurotic housewife. And then I read Abraham Maslow, Toward a Psychology of Being. And this relates to the whole human race. He was one of the first psychologists to study wellness rather than illness. And in his study, he discovered that every joyful, productive, beneficent, and happy human being had one thing in common: chosen work they found intrinsically self-rewarding, and of service to at least one other. Now, for Western culture, that was a big breakthrough. If you look back at what John was saying, with the Hopi traditions, with all the native traditions, that's the tradition. But we got all this individuation, all this separation, and China and India and the world, much of it is heading still in that direction, as much of us we are. But it absolutely, the beauty of the nature of the humans that I think is going to be activated as the crisis deepens and we head deeper into towards 2012 and beyond, is that the innate human requirement and desire and yearning to express creativity for the evolution of oneself and one's community and one's world will be the driving force that opens up the next stage of evolution. And I have coined a word for it. And the word is we're moving from procreation toward co-creation. From sexuality and reproduction to suprasexuality and self-evolution. Big thought. Doesn't mean no sex. It means, and particularly in the feminine, that huge drive to self-reproduce and to nurture and to hold the unknown child in your arms, to love the unknown child, which itself is at the hormonal level. You love the unknown child. It comes forth out of your body. That when that woman is aware, even at the level of her deepest psyche, that she's going to have chosen children or few children or even no children, the energy that went into massive procreation is available. And the women are turning on all over the world at the moment that they get a choice. And I've coined this phrase for suprasexual co-creation is the feminine co-creator. I think it's an archetype. The feminine co-creator is a woman who's incarnating the full power of creativity, of the divine, of the source process of creation. And when she gets attracted to her own highest purpose, life expression, she falls in love with it. And if she says yes to that inner calling, she becomes the emergence of our new species. It's just to say, particularly the postmenopausal women. Is there anybody here over 50? Well, good. Because I believe, I once gave a talk like this at the World Future Society, and I was talking about a hormonal reserve, and they thought I had meant an oil well. Over 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and more, and no eggs. We are the egg. We are the egg. Because when women at any age, but as we get older, it's a new phenomenon that there should be so many of us getting older without any social pattern to say you've got to do this or that. That what seems to happen is when the woman falls in love with her own expression, her own essence, her own creativity, that she begins to regenerate herself at a cellular level. Cellular regeneration through guided creativity. Cellular regeneration through guided creativity. Because we're needed. And I've coined another word for this stage, regenopause. After menopause, you become the expression. Well, I think your body goes through a pause. It's sort of confused. Well, we're dying, aren't we? No. It seems like some spiritual, creative force. How many women feel this way? Okay. Now the men. Is there a comparable force happening inside the men where they are tuning in to their own essence, and while the patriarchy itself is collapsing everywhere, the top-down structures of nation-state, organized religion, global corporations cannot solve these problems. They make them worse. And the men have been really corralled to do that. They've been almost drawn into it even against their will. How does it feel to be a man? Coming in contact with your own essence, with the women doing the same. Does somebody want to just shout out any phrases from the men?
Liberation.
Liberation. Yeah. Confusion. Crying. Creativity. Healed. Surrender. Thank you. So if the woman, in our work towards 2012 being a phase change on planet Earth, is preparation within the feminine co-creator, the evolutionary woman, joining in partnerships and teams of all kinds with the evolutionary man. I believe we are founding a new family of humanity by this degree of joining in small couples, teams, partners, friends, and with the dispersing over-individualism of Western culture, to be reuniting, not simply to procreate at the family level, except by choice, but to co-create, such that by joining each of our creative potential is further actualized through the joining. Cody and Robin, as an example. It's a great thing, the founding of a new family of humanity. Thank you, Cody and Robin. Really. Thank you. And it's not easy all the time. There are all kinds of things that come up, and I won't go into it. Now, I want to bring in the great philosophers and futurists that I think need to be added to the mix of the 2012 family of the emerging humanity. And I'll just tell you the ones that were the most significant to me that I want to bring in. And the first was Abraham Maslow, toward a psychology of being, founder of humanistic psychology, transpersonal psychology, and just at the growing tip of what we're beginning to call evolutionary psychology, which would be psychology of the evolving human, not simply how to be okay as a good human. And there are those of us who feel there's an edge here towards the species mutation. That the species Homo sapiens sapiens is giving birth to a species that yet has no name, that already comes through the heart and is already connected to the whole. Homo luminous. Yes, we're going to give ourselves some names because it's important. So I got it first from Maslow. Second for me was Teilhard de Chardin. How many of you here know of Teilhard de Chardin? Okay, he was a Catholic Jesuit paleontologist, never published in his lifetime by the church, banned by the church, but nonetheless, he discovered God in matter. Despite the church. And what he discovered was the pattern in the process of evolution, the Godhead evolving toward, his pattern was the law of complexity consciousness. As systems became more complex, like from single cell to multi-cell to animal to early humans to humans, as a system became more complex, it jumped in consciousness and freedom. It jumped not only in external complexity, but in interiority, in connectivity of the inner parts. And he foresaw that there would be a time when the noosphere, the thinking layer of Earth, that came out of language and culture and now internet, the thinking layer of Earth itself would get its collective eyes. And we would connect heart with heart, center with center. That would mean the center in each of us, sourcing center. In each of us, by the nature of the way systems evolve, would connect, and there would be, he called it, because he was Christian, the Christification of the earth. We could call it the planetary awakening, the coming together of humanity as one whole body, all the different languages of all the different cultures. If I had to put forward a vision of the direction of 2012, it's that. And when I, from my Jewish, agnostic, secular, materialistic background, read Teilhard de Chardin, the tears were coming down my face. I had the closest thing to a conversion experience from reading that book. And I realized that the force in me as a housewife in Lakeville towards something higher, something greater, something more, that I was considered neurotic for, was actually the universe within me evolving. In every single one of us, I became the universe in person. Now there was the shift of identity from the person who had something wrong with her because of this yearning for greater participation to the person, as all persons, who was created by the entire process of creation that was continuing in us. There's absolutely no reason to assume it stops here with a little furry biped with an eternal spirit. Why? If I were God, I wouldn't stop here. And we're not stopping here. So, Teilhard de Chardin, the other great, that was for the Western Catholic tradition. The other greatest sage, I think, in evolutionary humanity is Sri Aurobindo, and the mother from India. How many of you here know of Sri Aurobindo? Almost everybody, too. He wrote many, many works. He developed the integral yoga. He developed Aurobindo with the mother, which is the first city of the new dawn, dedicated to exactly what we're doing. And in the Life Divine, he identified the God in two ways: God the eternal, and then God the evolving, or the consciousness force. And he saw that as a supramental intelligence at the atomic, molecular, organic levels, all the way on up to the great beings, until at some point, and he and the mother were working in this direction, the supramental, universal, genius intelligence of the creative force incarnates as us. And he called that the Gnostic Human. And the Gnostic Human, he felt, would change at the cellular level. That actually consciousness affects bodies. We know that. And he foresaw that the kind of human that would be emerging, but it couldn't be done by a few. there had to be enough in which this higher intelligence, this love intelligence, incarnates enough to create the resonant field in which that form of consciousness would be stabilized. It's like what I was doing with Maureen. It's all here already, but it doesn't get stabilized in most of us. And one of the great things, I think, in preparation for 2012 is that path. And then I'd like to add another one, Buckminster Fuller. How many of you know of Buckminster Fuller's work? Everybody. All right, that's interesting. More than Teilhard or Aurobindo. Buckminster Fuller, the way I found him was his little book, Utopia or Oblivion. And in that book there was the phrase, we now have the technology, resources, and know-how to make of this world a 100% success without destroying the environment or taking it away. And he described how that was so through the design science revolution. And I got to know Bucky Fuller as I got to know Abraham Maslow. Teilhard and Aurobindo I never did know. And I want to tell you just a little story about Bucky and why he called me the best informed person now alive, is that both of us had had a Christ experience. And Bucky's Christ experience was that he was walking along the streets in Chicago. He tells this part. He saw light. He got lifted up by the light. And he heard the words, Bucky, you are the first mini Christ on earth. And what you attest to is true. And I think what Bucky understood is the nature of nature is regenerative. The universe can't know less. It has the tendency toward higher life. And it can work if we understand the design of creation. And one day, I had written this book about the New Testament of an evolutionary Christ. Bucky asked to see me alone. He put his arms around me. He called everybody darling. And he said, darling, I had the same experience. And he put his forehead onto his temple, onto mine. And I feel he zapped me with the design science revolution. Now, I don't think John Kenny is here, is he? He is? Yay, oh good. So I'll tell you what I did last night. It's not usual for me, but after John spoke, I went up and asked him for a date. Where are you, John? And I realized that I use the phrase mind meld, that if I had had a mind meld with Buckminster Fuller, I'd like to have one with John. Now, John didn't know when I asked him for a date what I wanted. But he said yes anyway. And we went out to dinner with Maureen and Glenn. And I told him about this because I felt, in hearing John speak, that the huge strand of the indigenous people, of the Hopis, was not one that I had assimilated deeply. Because I'd gotten these other evolutionaries more. And so I didn't have time to study the whole thing and asked him if he'd do a mind meld. I hope that I'm going to read his books. I'm not depending only on the mind meld, but I do believe that it is, when you add all of that knowledge with Teilhard, Aurobindo, Bucky, Maslow, and others of other cultures, that this must be not just a multicultural event, but truly a synthesis of all of those strands. And I want to just tell you how I got it experientially. After reading all of this, and it was, you'll see it in my movie tonight, the question to the universe: what is our story? What story is comparable to the story of the birth of Christ? Now, this was not about Christ, but the fact that 4 Gospels got written. Nobody knows exactly what happened, but the 4 Gospels, and people believing it changed the world. So I asked the universe, do we have a story that if we told it would be as great for our culture, for human culture, as the Gospels were for their time, and changed history by that? And what I got, you'll see in the movie, is I became an astronaut. I felt the Earth as a living system. We're all members of it. I could feel the pain, I could feel the stress like a Disney film. You could see the whole thing struggling. I went back and tumbled through the whole of the evolutionary spiral, and I came up to the present, and I felt suddenly the pain so deep that everybody stopped for 1 second, and in came empathy, flooding in. We've had it a few times. We've had it with Katrina, we had it with 9/11, we've had it with Haiti, but it doesn't hold because the structures don't change. So no matter how much empathy floods, how much the peace movement, how much the caring, it goes back. You can feel that, and we've had it, and we've had it. Okay, in this experience, which I feel is getting very, very close, the empathy did not stop. It overwhelmed the structures. You see, but it's not too far from that, because people in the structures are also people that would like to get out of the structures, but there's something that's needed to trigger that whole thing to move. The second thing that happened is people began to hear the inner voice from within, not projected onto a religion or a god, but as sourcing themselves in their own language. It was like the Tower of Babel came down. And when that happened, the healings took place. So, it's funny, I am using the past tense. And I notice there's something interesting about this vision. It's as though it already happened. Now, whether it's on another planet, I mean, sometimes I think maybe it was another planet and we're coming in to remember, maybe. Or maybe it's just an intuitive precognitive knowing. That's a question I don't know, but I remember this. And I always shift to past tense unexpectedly, because actually I'm projecting and hoping it's going to happen. So then comes the unusual part of this that became a cause for my life. I experienced, with the empathy, the inner voice, the healings, and the media picking up the news of the healings, it started to heal the news system. See, the news has the wrong filter. The news is terrible. It's picking up everything that's painful, breaking down, or sensational and stupid. Where is CBS, NBC, and ABC here? Are you here? Why not? It's not considered news if it's emerging. You see, that's really a terrible decision. Our nervous system is sick. It has dysempathitis of the mass media. Dead on empathy. Okay. So, what time do I have till? Oh, good. Okay. So, let's see. I forgot where I was. Dysempathitis. What happened in the vision, which is about to happen? This is what's so interesting about not dying, is that I experience what I call the synchronization of the social systems. And Robin may remember this from the earlier Prophets Conference. In my visualization, there's a wheel of co-creation that has all the functions like health, education, economics, science and technology, arts and media, and so forth. These are functions of the social body at any level, from small group, regional, national, all the way on up to global. What I felt was that innovations and breakthroughs now existing as we sit here were by the same power that actually coordinates life and cells and trillions of cells to create bodies like ourselves, coordinated the innovations, and they became the functional capabilities of the living planetary system at the next stage of evolution. You see, people do have to eat. And you can't have everybody going back. to the land. There's just too many people. Now maybe there will be mass die-offs. That is a scenario. This scenario was more gentle than that. I don't know which will happen, but the gentle scenario, along with empathy and consciousness and healing, was internet used to identify what's working in every field already now, the emerging world, connect it, and invite people to participate in it by giving their gifts, and there is enough right now to shift the world. Now, and we might be, in using the thought of Ilya Prigogine and dissipative structures and how nature has evolved up the chain of complexity with the second law of thermodynamics, increasing entropy, increasing disorder. Actually, evolution eats disorder. We're eating the disorder of our culture. We couldn't do it without disorder, creating higher order. We're in the chaos window. So the thought here is that there will be, and we're right close to it, internet systems, and one that we're working on, instead of a search engine, it's called a synergy engine. And the synergy engine has the purpose of identifying what's working in every field, but the most important purpose is inviting everybody anywhere on earth to express their own desire to create. If you think of Maslow, life purpose, self-rewarding, you need connections. You need a field. You can't do it all by yourself. Even if you're in our culture, if you don't find the right partners, you can't get anything done. So the synergy engine turned on in this vision, and let's say it's going to turn on by December 21st, 2012. It would be nonlinear, exponential interaction of what's created. And according to the Prigogine model of dissipative structures, that leads to the system cooperating in its own self-transcendence. Nonlinear, exponential interaction of that which is creative, which is innovative, which is loving, which is caring, which is compassionate, in every field, seen as an organic whole system. And the whole design science revolution is about whole system shift. You know, we're not doing this in separate projects. We are all members of one body, and we are functionally all members of this one body. So in this beautiful experience, which you'll see tonight, the experience was of radiant light. And the light came up through the earth out into the universe, and it came up like the light of mystics, who often say, you know, God is light. Well, we had an experience of shared light. But what happened was we attracted the light by becoming the light. And we attracted, I never use the word alien. It's a bad word. I don't like the word extraterrestrial either. It's like foreign aid. There's no foreign, there's no alien, and we're all children of the universe. But I had a pre-experience that humanity, when it is, oh, I heard the words, Barbara, our story is a birth. It is a birth of humanity as one living body. What Christ and all the avatars came to tell us is true. We are one body. We are being born. Go tell the story, Barbara. I got a vocation. That's what I'm still doing. Look at this. That was 1966. Now, there's something about anybody getting a vocation, is that it imprints on you something deeper than this is my profession, or I'd like to be, you know, a speaker. It actually activates in you the process of creation. For anybody saying yes. So it also affects you at the cellular level. Because by saying yes to that which is creative within you is saying yes to the God force. And actually, it enlivens. And I've noticed in myself and others who are getting what we consider to be older, is actually you're getting newer. It doesn't feel chronologically specific. it doesn't feel like saging or aging, actually. It feels like evolving, emerging, creating. And I believe that as this type of thing goes on, those who are born now, younger, as this keeps going, you know, we hear a lot about longevity, but this is more than just longevity. It's actually mutation. You see, it's not staying alive longer as you were. It's not even being healthy. I'm not even totally healthy. I have chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Now, when I was told that, I said, well, that couldn't be my disease. Look at me, I'm too busy. And I got about it, and I'm not sure this is true, but the white blood cells defend you, and I got a sense of over-urgency about doing whatever I could do for the birth. And I never could stop. I became compulsively motivated. And that's a problem of getting a life purpose. Does anybody else feel compulsive here? Yeah, it is almost natural to feel compulsive, but it's really good if you can do something about it, like breathe. But you know what, I give myself a little slack because I say, well, maybe it's like a woman on the delivery table. It's one thing, yes, breathe, but it's painful and difficult. And there's a timing in it. So giving us the natural sense that this is a planetary event and that every single person is a member of it, whether we know it or not, but the ones that do know it, like the people in this room, and know that we're working toward the delivery of the next phase of human evolution in ourselves, in our communities, in our life, that maybe it's okay to be compulsive right now. Anyway, I am. So I went and told a story. I got my story, and I do want to tell you that the new type of human, that Aurobindo called it Gnostic Human, Teilhard called it ultra-human, you said Homo luminous. There's Homo divina, somebody said there's Homo noeticus. I have used the simple phrase universal human. I kind of like universal human because it indicates both generically universal and also part of the galaxies. And you remember what John was saying yesterday, this is galactic. Galactic, I mean, Earth is a tiny little body giving birth to a species possibly capable of co-evolving, co-creating, emerging, and being galactic and being in touch with other life in a meaningful way. So this is extremely important that the universal human is connected through the heart to the whole of life. Empathy is natural. The universal human seems to be activated by an inner life purpose that feels as though it's a calling and the reason you were born. Does that feel true? It feels like a calling, and it is. And it cannot be achieved, however, without joining with others. There is no way that you can achieve your inner life purpose without joining, and to join you need the resonance. And resonance means resounding, echoing back to one another that which is the highest in each of you. And when you're fortunate enough to be in the two or more, I'm just thinking of you because I did a teleseminar called The Sacred Way of Conscious Evolution. Tell me your name again.
Judith Brock.
Judith, I met several people here who were on the teleseminar that I had never met personally. When Judith came up to me, we knew each other because we had shared the resonance. And the resonance actually is non-local. There's a great importance in locality, but also if you take the meaning that the universe has an aspect that's non-local, instantaneous connectivity, where if something happens to one atom, it happens to another in the non-local domain. When you get into the non-local, however you get there, and teleseminars is one of the ways, by the way, that I got there, is that then people want to keep on co-creating. Isn't that right?
Yes.
You know why? Because it feels good. I've thought of the joy of sex. Well, here's the joy of suprasex. Nature had to make this enjoyable. And actually, if you're not in the if you're not with others that you feel you can co-create with, what happens is you get lonely. You get depressed. And depression is a signal of what wants to be expressed. So instead of saying what's wrong with me by being depressed, you say, okay, thank you, let's follow what that is, because something wants to be expressed, and it happens to me all the time. I think I'm doing it right, and then I get depressed. And so I ask, is there more? And instead of saying something more is neurotic, you say it's the way the universe works. And I don't know if you've ever seen Brian Swimm's marvelous things called The Powers of the Universe. It's a DVD. I recommend it for everyone. And he tells the story of the universe. And there's several things I love about the universe because I thought they were my problems. And one of them, the universe is very generative and always wants more. So instead of thinking that you're wanting more is something wrong with you, it's actually the universe generating its creativity, which is ever unfolding. And Brian tells this great story. Here's the local group. That's our Milky Way galaxy, the local group. It's huge, but nonetheless. So he puts it like this. Here's the local group. And the nearby group, I think it's Magellan, or another huge galaxy. Somebody will tell me what the right name of it is. But here's the story. The Magellan galaxy evidently was going on for billions of years making stars, and then it just stopped. But it drifted towards the local group. And this is Brian. When it got in the arena of the local group, guess what? It began to make more stars. And Brian's theory of the universe is, he said, everything happens by allurement. Isn't that a great word? Allurement and attraction. Even gravity. He said he was studying all of this, and he held a rock, and the rock fell, and he said he realized they didn't really know why after all the study. So he said, it's attraction. In some respects, the entire universe is operating out of the attraction of particles for one another. It's all sexual, suprasexual, transsexual, created. So when you feel that inside yourself, and it feels like you've not done enough or more to do, don't have self-judgment. That's the problem. Don't think, I'm a terrible failure, I haven't done enough. That's what, that's a Jewish oy vey. Your father will never approve of you. It's a curse. It's a curse of our particular culture, but it's not, I don't think we are the only ones to have it. So what happens is when you feel the desire to do more in preparation for 2012 and for your whole life, recognize it's the universe in you. And the universe generates more creativity. It's enormously creative. And we're designed to be creative, just like John said. And creativity cannot happen alone anymore. It's not the story of a lonely creator who is getting an idea. It's the story of joining out of passion to create. And the finding of the right chosen partners is as important as marriage. And it's actually, in some respects, more challenging because at least marriage, there's a whole template about what it means to get married, or used to anyway. Now, it's this. So, connecting through the heart, finding vocation, going for the partnerships, following the attractions. I called up Abraham Maslow after I read his book, and I said, I'd like to take you to lunch. Now, I thought that was a really bold thing to do, but the amazing thing was he said yes, and I came to lunch, and I told him of my desire, and he said, I'm going to give you the list of 300 people I've collected in my whole life for you to call up and tell them you're desirous of knowing the next step for the future good. Never doubt that by following an attraction, you may have the most amazing results, but you have to be bold enough to do it. And particularly if you don't feel really powerful. Like I certainly didn't feel powerful when I called up Dr. Maslow. And then I did another thing which made a huge difference. I wrote a letter to Jonas Salk about what his theater of man should be. So these are good hints in case you have ideas that should happen. Well, I didn't know Jonas Salk. I was a housewife in Lakeville. I just had my 5th child. And dear Dr. Salk, I think the theater of man should do boom, 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 because I had just gotten hold of the evolutionary story. So I got a call about a week later, said, Mrs. Hubbard, yes, this is Dr. Salk. You expressed my vision better than I could have. We are two peas in the same genetic pod. Can I take you to lunch? Well, it was the most phenomenal thing because I had never met another person, whatever we want to call this. Teilhard called it homo progressivus too. It's a type attracted to the future, type with a sense of the emergent possibilities of the unknown, not the known, the unknown. So when Jonas said, I want to take you to lunch, my life changed because I could tell from his voice that I had finally found someone that I would say could resonate and recognize me from being this seeking, neurotic, loved my children. Everything was in that sense very good. So when he took me to lunch, I told him everything that was wrong with me. I was attracted to the future. I thought I wanted to participate. I thought something more was happening. But I said, obviously, it's very sick. He said, sick? This happens to be not what's wrong with you, it's what's right with you. You are a psychological mutant. And I'm going to introduce you to 4 others I met in my whole life. Now, this was way back in 1964. We didn't know each other. Do you realize, and I met these other few people and my life was forever changed. Do you realize how fortunate we are to know each other? This is, we were talking with Doris, the idea that there's an emergent type. And the qualities of this emergent type are in the room. We're all over the place now, in every culture, in every religion, in every age. But the type is attracted to the future, emerging, and to the desire to participate, and somehow the intuition of it coming together as a whole, and all of us being part of it. And there's a radical quality, not only of the sense of what's being destroyed, but a sense of what's being born. The sense of what's being born. So this universal human is also got cosmic consciousness. Feels we're not alone in the universe. How many people feel you're a part of a living universe? You see, that's still not held in the ordinary, what's ordinary called Western, modern, or modernistic. Okay, so I became this type. And I want to tell you that I did a couple of things, all of which I believe are preparation. And it's interesting because my talk is how to prepare. Think for a moment of everything you've done in your life that prepares you for what you're going to do in 2012. Everybody, everything. And it's really, really interesting. Neil Donald Walsh is doing a biography of me, which I have to read on the computer as soon as I go home. And he decided to start out in the future. And what he did is he's starting out on what I'll tell you about in just a moment, day 1, which is an opportunity that I've been asked to do on December 22nd, 2012, which is the beginning of the next calendar. And he started out my biography with me doing that. And then backs down to all the things, including, up to the time of birth, and what you notice if you take your highest vision, and let's take your highest vision for 2012. We'll do that in just a moment as an exercise. Just take that highest vision for the moment, and if you hold it as real, what happens, you go down to the rest of your life and you found every single thing you did was meaningful toward that. Whereas if you come up from when you were born, these things may look very disconnected. And if you don't keep going toward the thing that most attracts you to be, to do, to become, if you don't do that, what happens is you don't get the meaning of all the aspects of your life. And it was really interesting for me to, and I said, but Neil, you're writing my biography, but I'm not sure it's going to happen the way you're saying. He said, well, that's all right. I'm going to ask the readers to help make it happen. And I thought that was really an interesting idea, is to write about what you most deeply hold to be the deepest truth of your life, but it's immanent, it's emergent. Because in the imaginal realm, it's really necessary to do that. If you just hold it within yourself, the universe can't fully incarnate it. And I have become a great advocate of it being in the imaginal realm, with each other, alone, with each other, and with your voice to speak it out. So we'll get to that just in a moment. I was absolutely turned on by my vocation. I formed the Committee for the Future, and I was telling John last night, believe it or not, the head of the committee was the general who did the manned orbiting laboratory, which he said was the last good technical invention that we made, and it dropped out of the sky. Well, the manned orbiting laboratory, General Joseph Blaymeyer was his name. We were saying that there should be a positive Earth-space development peaceful program, and that the high-tech industries that were going into either Star Wars should go into Star Worlds. And if there were a cooperative Earth-space human development program over the next 30 years, possibly, and this could have been completely wrong, it didn't happen, obviously, because the two-hearteds had control of it. But I attracted the space program, the people who built the space program, I attracted the high-tech engineers, and I loved them. And you know, often they have a very bad reputation. They're hired by industry and military. But I think we should have high-tech geniuses at all these conferences. I don't think they should be separated out, because when they are opened up, they want this, but they're not asked, and they're shy about speaking of it. But because I was very much advocating the space program, and I can see all the problems with it. And then in preparation, so let's say we want to incorporate the best of the high technologies in 2012. And that they be part of the orchestration, not only just the communication, but the clean energy people, the people working on enormously interesting and very dangerous technologies. What are they for? What is biotech, nanotech, what is that for? What are those people doing? They're changing the material world, totally. And we're talking over here and they're talking over there, and they got billions of dollars working in their direction. Now, I happen to have met the young man, Eric Drexler, who was one of the founders of nanotechnology, and he was sent to me when he was very young, and he was asking for help, and I had just been having my Christ experience, and he called me up one day and he said, well, Barbara, I think we can do resurrections now. I said, well, what do you mean we can do resurrections? Well, DNA is a pattern. It's an information pattern, and we can learn it, we can reproduce it, we can save it, and sort of Star Trek. We can do it all. I said, well, it's about time, Eric. He said, what do you mean it's about time? I said, you know, we've had the intuition that we're going to have powers of gods. Is it true? And if we are inheriting godlike power, is it because the nature of God is to create godlings? If the nature of God is to create godlings, then, and we're not at all wise godlings, we're toddler godlings. Could we grow up as godlings? Question. But if we can grow up as people created in the image of the creative intention of the universe, gaining the powers to destroy and create, maybe God had to put freedom in the system. Otherwise it would be a robotic universe. It's a choice. Conscious evolution. And what I got out of my both Christ experience and the planetary birth experience was that we're entering the first era of conscious evolution, which is the evolution of evolution from unconscious to conscious choice. And it comes up out of the discovery of cosmogenesis, the actual pattern of universal evolution. It comes up out of the new crises that cannot be resolved by doing more of the same. And it comes up out of our new capacities. Spiritual, social, and scientific. And so I truly believe that conscious evolution is the advent of the stage in which humans become co-creators with the divine. In a universe filled with life. And that when we are ready to rise to meet that life by the evolving of our own life and our own resonance, we're going to have the greatest explosion of creativity and joy that probably we have ever known as a humanity. That's what I think. Yeah, thank you. And in my own work, then with the Bucky Fuller advising me, I decided to try this in the political arena. So you may know the story, but in 1984, I decided to run to be selected as the Vice President of the United States on the Democratic ticket. And in our country, you could do this. I didn't have anybody selecting me. I decided to run as an idea campaign to offer myself to anybody who was selected as president. So, anybody can do this. That's the great thing about democracy. So I formed the campaign, I went around the country, and I had a proposal, which was so incredibly simple and good. Here's the proposal. That in the office of the vice president, there should be a new social function. Its purpose is to scan for, map, connect, and communicate what's working in America and the world. The president works with everything that isn't working. The vice president works with everything that is working. And he communicates that to the world and invites every single country to do the same. And I said to all these little friends in small groups and church basements and small conferences, I said that within 4 years we'll see the new world. It's here. And by golly, what happened was 90 positive future centers formed, and they began to resonate at a community level. They turned to each other, they turned to their source within, they wanted to create in their communities, but we didn't even have all this internet, but I got them all on the phone. I said, I have no money, no media, and no passes to the floor, but my guidance is go to the convention. San Francisco, 1984, got them all on the phone, everybody's resonating, myself and 10 people. We had no passes, but we got in. The governor's wife of Colorado knew me, and she let me in. And then I got to make 30-second speeches at like South Dakota, 5:30 a.m. There weren't too many people there, and my other 10 friends did the same. We just 30 seconds, we wanted to be vice president, to map, track, and connect what's working in America and the world, and they signed up. First day, 100, second day, another 100, and you need to have 200 to be nominated. And lots of people were trying. Famous political figures were trying. And I was the other woman who got Geraldine Ferraro and myself. And when they told me, the Democratic Party was horrified, somebody slipped through the nets. I just slipped in. And they said, they moved the convention up 2 hours, but I had to go up and make the speech. So I had to go up, and the guard led me up this great big thing to the great platform that I had envisioned in all these yoga basements. That's what I'm saying. Wow. And he said, now honey, they won't pay any attention to you. They never do. You're saying it for the universe. So I got up there, and they weren't paying any attention. All the delegates were moving around, except for Oregon, which had nominated me. And I said, I declare that the United States of America and all the other countries will have a new function to scan for, map, connect, and communicate. And Thomas Jefferson said, all people are born creative, endowed by our creativity with the right to express that creativity. I just acted as though everybody was listening. Nobody was listening. But the universe was listening. The universe listens. The universe is responsive to request. I believe that by 2012 or 2014 or 20, wherever, there will be this function, and it will be the people who form it, not the president, not the vice president, but the government system is failing because it's oppositional. The Dalai Lama could be president, somebody said, and he wouldn't get anything done. Because you get into an opposite, so Obama is carrying the seed for us, but the system won't allow it to happen. So that is true in the nation states, it's true in the United Nations. The nation state is the wrong system. And we founded the Committee for the Future in 1970s in Washington, and we did 25 conferences, and we put people together in sectors of the wheel. You'd love this, John. And what we did, it was like trying to create a Western indigenous environment in school auditoriums, big wheels, like the first one, Southern Illinois University. So we asked people to go in and say, what's your passion to create? What do you need to create it that you don't have? And what resources would you like to share to others in this wheel? And we brought opposing people in every sector, and then I won't take the time now, but we took down sectors, and they looked for common goals and matched needs with resources throughout this divisive system, but because they were all in a circle, we changed the social architecture. Social architecture is extremely important. Everything is structured in rows. And you could be the most synergistic person in the world, but the structure makes it hard. The workshop is a little bit better, but the best thing at all is to have a huge SynCon. And a huge SynCon, well, you could have it at local levels, you could have it social, and you could have it global. And I want to talk to Robin about this. We need a big SynCon in this. All right, so I want to say that after the vice presidential campaign, it was incredibly powerful. It showed you could do anything, but I had no idea what to do next because it was too big. And I wasn't a politician. And I thought, well, then I went through a lot of problems. But the thing was that I met one of the people I saw that a little bit later was Nassim Haramein. And I know him fairly well. And I'm going to end this story here now because it's so amazing. So Nassim was telling me a marvelous story. You know, how many people here know Nassim? A lot of you. And also his continual contact with higher life. And he knows the stories of them. And I thought, why is it that Nassim has all this experience and I don't have any of it? So I complained to the universe. I said, okay, I want contact. I'm tired of this. And I had an amazing experience. It wasn't exactly an off-planet universal being, but it was a light being that is my own extended light self, which I believe undoubtedly everyone has a version of it. And this being was ecstatic. It was totally free from the gravity field of Earth. It was non-local, and yet it had presence. And it basically said, keep your attention on me. I am coded with your own evolution. We need to put our attention on the highest level of frequency that we know, whether it comes in the of a Christ or an avatar or yourself. In my case, it had first been the Christ, and then it was this light being, and it's light. Just like my experience of the Christ was a light being. And I think that's true. I think the light being is the next stage. It's not the heavy physical bodies, but it has presence. It's not completely generalized. And so this being said, keep your attention on me. I'm coded with your own evolution. And I wrote a lot of stuff in my journal of guidance that probably each of you have had. Some of it was so weird I never told anyone. But it was like, Barbara, you come through a stellar gate. You are here to hold a certain, you're here to be a demonstration of a normal human being learning this. Therefore, we're not going to tell you too much. Because if you have big white light experiences or sudden experiences, you can't share them. So I've been a journal writer, and step by step by step, it's actually trackable. because it's been so slow in my particular case. And here's the finale that is so exciting. Recently, about a year ago, I received a call from a woman, and she said, Barbara, what would you do with $1 million? If your goal was to help humanity have a more positive contact with extraterrestrials. And I just popped out with, I think I'd create a welcoming committee. And the welcoming committee would be made of highly sophisticated, science-based, spiritually attuned people who know the different fields of endeavor. And if we could create enough synergy, maybe it's 12 people, it's not huge at all, but they're very special, high frequency. And our purpose would be to be a microcosm demonstration of Earth's oneness at the next level of sophistication, of knowledge, of innovation, and be receptive to other life, that would be a contribution. And she said, that's right. And then I said, well, I'm going to need the synergy engine. I need the peace room. I need the sophisticated internet connection, because it's not about any one group, it's about everyone. What if we had an internet site that could connect everyone who wanted to be creative at the time of 2012, said I. So she said, yes. So then what happened is that this started to be in the works. My colleague, Daryl Laham, who has built a very successful internet company, is in the process of attempting to design this, and he calls it a planetary associative memory system. Like if I asked you, think of your house, your brain gets that immediately for you. What the search engine, synergy engine will do is you're here, you're seeking your partners, you're seeking to know, and instead of getting a long list, the system helps connect you with what you need. En masse. He said, Daryl says, you have to scale up. It's not enough to do it at small scales if you're talking about planetary evolution. So that is in the works. Now, here is the interesting thought. I was asked by this man who is in Phoenix, Arizona. His name is Michael Tanner. And he is an evolutionary Mormon. And he's told me a lot of very, very interesting stories of what the Mormons believe. And he happened to have been present for the Phoenix Lights, 1997. John was there. Yes, John? Yes. He was driving through and saw the huge vehicles. Some people apparently didn't notice it, but John was saying a lot of people were going about their affairs, but you couldn't miss it. Is that right, John? They're real. And there was a National Geographic special. So this man, Michael Tanner, has as his passion several things. One, he's doing a trilogy of the Phoenix Lights to show people that this happened, with a lot of the research that would go into what would be the technical sophistication. And his own interpretation is that they are photon beings. They're light, and they can materialize or dematerialize. And so he is creating an event from December, it's a 10-day event from December 12th through December 22nd. And there'll be many things that he will be wanting to do at this time, but he particularly is interested in what he calls the family reunion, which is to bring all the different religions together in an orchestrated way through December 21st. And then he has invited me, and this is my life purpose, don't forget, from 1996, Barbara, go tell the story of the birth of humanity as one living body. Barbara, do that. 1966. He said to me, would you be interested in telling the story of the birth on December 22nd, which is to be celebrated as the day one, and that's his name for this whole thing, day one, of the next stage of the calendar. That would be what he calls a birthing moment. And the birthing moment would be a shared experience for humanity. But all of us would have to participate in building up to that in some way. That would, what was his phrase here? Critical path of coherence. He just called me this morning. Interconnect by satellite. December 22nd. It happens to be my birthday, which is totally amazing. A reunion in day one. He comes from the force, he lives in Phoenix. He knows all about the Hopis. John, I talked to him this morning. He is very steeped in that culture. He wants to do the reunion of man every 3 years after to give their gifts to the earth. By 2023, a joining of humanity from other worlds he thinks is possible. December 22nd, 2012, planetary birthing moment, interconnected via satellite. Very, very important. There was a phrase he used I liked so much. Oh, yes. The media work. He would hope to talk to Robin, which I will tell her about at lunch. He hopes to have a conversation with you that you might like to help organize this whole thing. I said, well, you couldn't have anybody better. The media work and Prophets Conference might help us. The importance of this region of the world, the whole Phoenix region, the four corners, just what you were saying, John. The future of man's concept of himself, the long count to be opened up, an invitation to the Phoenix lights for us to rise to meet them. And that just sounded to me like the truth, is that we have to rise. And rising means we have to connect first on this earth. It's not that we go up, just up. It means we go together. We become enough of us resonant with one another. And a birthing moment is a lovely image because birth is painful, birth is difficult. But when you see that newborn child, in this case it would be the newborn planetary self-awareness, there is a feeling of love. And women know this, even if the baby's a mess, they're a mess, whatever pain there has been. If the pain is meaningful toward a birth of ourselves and our world in a world of multidimensional universe, then the struggle has meaning. And we don't know what's normal in quotes for a planet, because we've never seen another one go through it. We may have in other lifetimes, in other dimensions. And as I get closer and closer to this, I feel as though it's more of remembering than it is making this up. So I'd like to conclude with the invitation that we need to develop a process of collaboration and communication among all of us working towards 2012, wherein whatever your particular gift is in that time frame, there would be a coordinating hub where people just will say what they're doing. And there would be a coordinating body of people to notice what everybody wants to do. There's so much. And that maybe it would be possible to communicate back to people that whole story of what wants to happen. And if everything that rises converges by nature, let's hold the intention that all the stream of efforts toward healing the earth, freeing the people, resonating with nature, and emerging as ourselves a co-creative universal humanity in a universe filled with life, that everybody on earth working toward that would share what they're doing. So, and I imagine that by the same power of coordination that nature has evolved up till now, that we would, with some slight help from the internet, a way of self-coordination. So that if we want to have a birthing moment on December 22nd, 2012, after this entire December 21st event, that we would do it together, all of us. And that is the reason for my being here now. That is the reason for all of us being here. And I want to thank you very much.